My daughter ran away with her lover and left me with her seriously ill 5-year-old son. Now he's your problem," she mocked as I stood there crying helplessly. 10 years later, my daughter called asking about him. Because she had seen a video with 50 million views, a 15-year-old artist speaking at a prestigious gallery, and suddenly she came back, not to apologize, but with a lawyer. "Give him back to me, I'm his mother." That's when I realized my daughter only wanted the money, but she didn't know I already had a plan, and I was going to teach my greedy daughter a very expensive lesson. I'm truly grateful you're here with me. Before we continue, take a moment to tell me where you're watching from, your city or country. I read every comment and they mean more than you know. And just a quick note, this story includes some dramatized elements created for learning and storytelling purposes. Any similarity to real people or places is coincidental, but the message behind it may still be meaningful to you. My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 76 years old now, and the story I'm about to tell you began 11 years ago on the worst day of my life. Well, the first worst day. There would be many more. But let me start at the beginning. It was a Tuesday morning in Seattle when everything changed. The pediatric oncology waiting room at Children's Hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. I sat in one of those hard plastic chairs, purse clutched on my lap, watching my 5-year-old grandson push a battered toy truck across the linoleum. Ethan. Small for his age, too thin, too pale. The kind of pale that makes nurses glance twice. Beside me, my daughter Sarah scrolled through her phone. Perfectly manicured nails tapping the screen. Designer purse on her lap. She'd barely spoken since we arrived. "Mrs. Hayes, Sarah." A nurse appeared in scrubs covered in cartoon bears. "Dr. Reynolds is ready." Ethan looked up at me, brown eyes wide. "Grandma, am I in trouble?" I forced a smile. "No, sweetheart. The doctor just wants to talk." Dr. Mitchell Reynolds was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand, then Sarah's, then crouched to Ethan's level. "Hey, buddy, cool truck." Ethan held it up shyly. "It's red." "Red's my favorite." Dr. Reynolds straightened, gestured to chairs. "Please sit." We settled in. He opened a thick folder, charts, numbers, words I didn't want to see. He didn't waste time. "Ethan has acute lymphoblastic leukemia. ALL, it's a blood cancer." The room tilted. "The good news," he continued quickly, "is that this is one of the most treatable childhood cancers. With proper treatment, we're looking at about a 90% survival rate." 90%. That should have felt like relief, but all I heard was the 10% that wasn't. "What does treatment look like?" I managed. Dr. Reynolds pulled out a timeline. "Intensive chemotherapy, 2 to 3 years total induction phase first, then consolidation and maintenance. We'll place a port in his chest for easier access. Infusions multiple times a week at first. It's going to be tough for all of you." "How much?" Sarah's voice cut in, flat, cold. Dr. Reynolds glanced at her. "With insurance, it varies. Out of pocket could be anywhere from 50 to several $100,000 depending on complications. Without insurance, 500,000, possibly more." Sarah laughed, short, bitter. $500,000 for a maybe, for a 90% chance, Dr. Reynolds corrected gently. She didn't respond, just stared at the wall. "When do we start?" I asked. "Within 48 hours. We need to begin induction immediately." I looked at Ethan back to his truck, making quiet engine noises. He had no idea his world had just shattered. "We'll do whatever it takes," I said. Dr. Reynolds nodded. "I'll have the nurses get you set up with scheduling and financial counseling." "Can I speak to you outside?" Sarah stood abruptly. "Alone." They stepped into the hallway. Through the window, I watched Sarah gesture, saw her mouth moving fast, saw Dr. Reynolds' expression shift from patient to concerned to something harder. When they came back, Sarah's jaw was tight. "He'll be fine," she said to me. Not to Ethan, to me. "You've got this, Mom." "You always do." Something cold settled in my stomach. In the parking lot, Sarah walked ahead to her car, a silver sedan too expensive for a woman who'd just heard her son had cancer. She didn't offer us a ride, didn't ask if we were okay. She just got in, started the engine, and drove away. Ethan tugged my hand. "Grandma, why is Mommy sad?" I looked down at him, small, fragile, sick. "She's just worried, sweetheart. Come on, let's go home." But as I buckled him into my old Honda, I knew the truth. Sarah wasn't worried. She was already planning her escape. And I was about to become a mother all over again at 65 years old. But I didn't know yet just how much it would cost me, or how much I'd be willing to pay. They started treatment within 48 hours. There was no time to prepare, no time to process words like portacath and cytotoxic and transfusion. You're never ready for something like this. You just survive it. The procedure room was all white walls and beeping machines. Ethan sat on the table in a hospital gown 3 sizes too big, thin legs dangling. A nurse named Jennifer prepped the port insertion kit with practiced efficiency. "This'll feel like a pinch, then some pressure," Jennifer said gently. "But once it's in, no more needle pokes every time." "Okay, sweetheart." Ethan's eyes fixed on the needle. "Will it hurt?" "A little," Jennifer admitted. She never lied to kids I'd learn. "But your grandma can hold your hand." I wrapped both hands around his small one. Sarah stood by the window, arms crossed, staring at the parking lot like answers might be written in the rows of cars. "Sarah," I said quietly, "come hold his other hand." She turned, glanced at Ethan, then the needle. Her face paled. I can't. He needs you." "I said I can't, Mom." Jennifer focused on Ethan. "Your grandma's got you. You're going to do great." The insertion took 10 minutes that felt like hours. Ethan whimpered, squeezed my hand hard, but didn't cry. When it was done, Jennifer taped clear dressing over the site and gave him a sticker, "Brave." Sarah was still at the window, still looking away. The first chemotherapy session started an hour later. Jennifer hooked the IV lines into Ethan's port, checked the pump twice. "This first one takes about 3 hours. I'll check every 15 minutes. I settled into the chair beside his bed. Sarah took the corner chair phone out, scrolling. For the first hour, Ethan dozed. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm I found myself counting. Then his eyes snapped open. His face went gray. "Grandma, I don't feel good." I barely got the basin under his chin before he started retching. Not food bile, then something darker that made my heart stop. Jennifer was there in seconds, adjusting the IV. "It's okay, this is normal, just his body reacting." But Ethan kept going, small, body convulsing. I held his shoulders gently. They'd warned me his skin would be sensitive, and murmured nonsense words. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here. I've got you." "Sarah," Jennifer called, "can you grab a wet washcloth and sit with him while I get anti-nausea meds?" Sarah stood, took one step toward us, and froze. Her eyes were on Ethan, pale face, dark fluid in the basin, trembling hands, and something in her shut down. I'd seen that look before. The day her father passed, she'd stood at his bed with the same blank expression. "I can't," she whispered. "Just the washcloth," Jennifer asked. "I can't. I'm sorry. I can't." She walked out, not to the bathroom, out the door into the hallway, gone. Jennifer handed me the washcloth she'd already prepared, gave Ethan the medication, stayed until his breathing settled. "Some parents struggle," she said quietly after Ethan dozed off. "She's not struggling," I said. "She's leaving." 2 hours later, I found Sarah in the parking lot, phone to her ear. Through the automatic doors, I barely heard her voice. "Doing everything already. I don't know why she needs me there." Derek. Had to be. Her boyfriend, who'd never met Ethan, who'd taken her to Cabo while I babysat, who I was suddenly certain was the reason she'd been so distant. I watched her laugh at something he said. Actually laugh while her son was upstairs with chemicals burning through his veins. She saw me through the glass. Her smile dropped. She said something quick and ended the call. I didn't go outside, just stood there meeting her eyes. And I knew. Not suspicion, certainty. She wasn't coming back up to that room. Not really. She might walk through the door, sit in that chair, stare at her phone, but she was already gone in every way that mattered. When I got back, Ethan was awake, glassy-eyed and exhausted. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he whispered. "I'm sorry I got sick." I smoothed his damp curls back. "You have nothing to be sorry for, baby. Nothing." The corner chair sat empty, and I understood with a clarity that made my chest ache that it always would be. 3 months into treatment, Sarah showed up at my door with a suitcase. Ethan was asleep in the spare bedroom, exhausted from that afternoon's session. He had no idea his world was about to shatter. I'd been rinsing dishes when the doorbell rang, impatient, insistent. I dried my hands and opened the door. Sarah stood there, designer purse over one shoulder, wheeled suitcase beside her. Rain dripped from the awning. "Sarah, what?" "I need to talk to you." She pushed past me into the living room. I closed the door slowly, dread settling in my stomach. "It's late. Ethan just fell asleep." "I know. That's why I came now." She pulled a manila envelope from her purse. "Here." "What is this?" "Power of attorney, medical decisions, and custody papers." The words didn't register. "Custody papers. Already signed. You just need to—" "What are you saying?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I can't do this anymore. Can't do but I knew. God help me, I knew. This. Him. Everything." Her voice cracked. "Every time I look at him, I see a boy who won't make it. I see my failure. I see 2 more years of hell and maybe a funeral, and I'm supposed to smile through it. He's your son. And he's broken." The words came out sharp. "He's bald, skeletal. He screams when I touch him because everything hurts. He looks at me like I'm the one causing it because you're never there. When you are, you stand in corners crying because I can't." She stepped closer. "I can't breathe. All I see is him slipping away and there's nothing I can do. So you're leaving while he's fighting for his life. He's fighting for his life, not mine. I still have one." She grabbed the suitcase. "Derek and I deserve a chance to be happy, to have something normal. What about Ethan's happiness? You've been doing this since day 1 anyway. I'm making it official." A car horn blared outside. Derek, waiting. "If you walk out—" She turned face cold. "Let's be honest. You've been taking over since the beginning. You wanted this someone to save someone to need you." She dropped the envelope on the table. "He's your problem now." The words hit like a fist. "He's not a problem." "Sure he is. 5 years old and broken. But you love fixing things right." Her smile was cruel. "This is your biggest project yet." The horn again, longer. "I gave him 5 years. That counts for something." "He's your child. He was my child." Her voice went flat. "Past tense. In a few years, he won't remember me anyway. Kids that young, especially sick ones, they forget. How can you— You know what you'll probably do better than me anyway. You always were the better mother." She stepped into the rain. "To your own kid and now to mine." She grabbed the suitcase handle. "Good luck, Mom. You're going to need it." The door slammed. I heard her footsteps, the trunk closing, the engine revving. Tires on wet pavement fading into silence. I stood there, envelope shaking in my hands. "Grandma." Ethan's small voice from the bedroom. "I don't feel good." I shoved the envelope in a drawer and wiped my face. Rain from the door, I told myself. Not tears. "Coming, sweetheart." I walked down the hallway past my reflection in the mirror, face, wet eyes, red hair, disheveled. I looked like someone whose world just ended, but at his doorway I stopped. He was curled under blankets so small, clutching that ratty stuffed bear someone had given him at the hospital. "Grandma!" His eyes opened, glassy with fever. I crossed the room and sat on the edge of his bed. "I'm here, baby. My tummy hurts." "I know. Let me get your medicine." He grabbed my hand before I could stand. "Don't leave." Something in my chest cracked wide open. "I'm not leaving," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise." I smoothed his damp curls back. "I promise." He closed his eyes, trusting, and within seconds his breathing evened out. I sat there in the dim light from the hallway, holding his small hand in both of mine, and whispered to the empty room. "You're not a problem. You're not broken. You're my grandson." My voice hardened. "And I will not let you slip away, not while I'm still breathing." Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, everything had changed. I had a 5-year-old with a terminal illness, no help, no backup plan, and a bank account that wouldn't last 6 months. But I had him, and that I decided would have to be enough. The first 2 years were hell, the kind of hell where you fall asleep wondering if your grandson will still be breathing in the morning. Sarah left on a Wednesday. By Friday, I'd sold my wedding ring, $800, 1 week of anti-nausea medication. The insurance covered 80% of treatment on paper. In reality, copays, deductibles, and non-covered essentials added up faster than I could count. I pawned my mother's pearl necklace for $600. My gold bracelet brought in $450. By month 4, I'd taken out a reverse mortgage on the house my husband and I had paid off 20 years ago, $70,000. But I didn't do it alone. I couldn't. I started a crowdfunding page called Ethan Smile and wrote letters to every pediatric cancer nonprofit I could find. The reverse mortgage became my matching fund proof I was invested, so organizations like St. Jude and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society would help cover gaps. Our church held bake sales. My coworkers at the grocery store donated from their paychecks. Strangers sent $5, $10, $20 with notes that said, "Stay strong," and "We're praying for you." I worked 2 part-time jobs, one stocking shelves at a grocery store, the other answering phones at a dental office. Every shift, every penny went straight to medications not covered by insurance. Antibacterial wipes, sterile masks, nutrition shakes at $40 a case. It took a village, and somehow we scraped by. The infection started in month 7. Ethan's immune system was gone. A scraped knee could end him. I scrubbed the house with bleach until my eyes burned. I boiled his sheets. I threw out his stuffed animals. It didn't matter. He spiked a fever of 104 on a Tuesday night. I rushed him to the ER sepsis. They pumped him full of antibiotics, and I sat by his bed, listening to machines beep and hiss. He stayed for 9 days. 2 weeks later, his blood counts dropped so low they had to transfuse him. I watched as someone else's cells dripped into his veins, praying they'd be enough. Then his hair fell out. Not all at once. Slowly. In clumps on his pillow in the drain between my fingers. He cried the first time he saw himself in the mirror. "I look sick, Grandma." "You look strong," I told him. That night, I picked up my husband's old razor and shaved my head. When Ethan woke up and saw me, his eyes went wide. "Grandma, what did you do?" I smiled. "We match now." He touched his own head, then reached up and touched mine. For the first time in weeks, he smiled. I found the Grandparents Raising Grandchildren group by accident, a flyer in the hospital lobby, Tuesdays at 6. The meeting was in a church basement that smelled like burnt coffee. 12 people sat in folding chairs. I sat in the back. A man with a soft voice opened, "If you're new, you're not alone." I wasn't expecting to cry, but when a woman said, "I'm raising my daughter's 3 kids because she chose substances over them," something cracked in my chest. "I'm Margaret," I said. "I'm raising my grandson. He has leukemia. His mother left." No one gasped. They just nodded, after a woman named Diane handed me her number. "Call if you need anything." I did, more than once. Slowly, I realized I wasn't carrying this alone. 4 years passed. Ethan drew. He filled sketchbooks with images of treatment, the chair, the IV, the port scar on his chest. He drew the nurses who'd held his hand. He drew Dr. Reynolds. He drew me over and over. And slowly we healed. On Ethan's 13th birthday, I baked a cake. We sat at the kitchen table, just the 2 of us, and he blew out the candles. The phone rang an hour later. "Mrs. Hayes, it's Dr. Reynolds." My stomach dropped. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. Ethan's 5-year scans just came back. Still clear. Officially, as of today, he's in remission." I closed my eyes. 5 years. 5 years. He did it, Margaret. You both did. I hung up and looked at Ethan, who was sketching at the table. That was Dr. Reynolds. He looked up. "You're officially in remission." For a moment, he just stared. Then he smiled wide, real the kind of smile I hadn't seen since he was 5. "We made it, Grandma." I nodded, tears streaming. We made it. After exactly 3 years, 1,095 days, 127 hospital visits, countless pills and tears, the final chemo session was scheduled. Dr. Reynolds met us in his office before the infusion. Ethan sat beside me, thinner than most 8-year-olds, but stronger than he'd been in years. His hair had grown back in soft brown waves. "I have good news," Dr. Reynolds said, looking at both of us. "Ethan's latest scans are clear. No trace of cancer cells. His blood counts are normal. His bone marrow is healthy." I gripped the armrest. "Clear." "Clear." Ethan looked up at me. "Does that mean I'm done?" Dr. Reynolds smiled. "It means today is your last treatment. This is a huge milestone, buddy." I couldn't speak. I just reached over and squeezed Ethan's hand. He's cancer-free, Dr. Reynolds continued. And that's something to celebrate. But I want to be clear, we don't use the word remission until he's been cancer-free for 5 years. Relapse can happen, especially in the first few years, so we'll keep monitoring closely. Scans every 3 months for the first year, then every 6 months after that. Ethan's face fell slightly. 5 more years. 5 years of checkups, Dr. Reynolds said gently. Not 5 years of treatment. Big difference. I nodded, throat tight. We'll take it. Dr. Reynolds stood and extended his hand. You've both been through hell. Today we celebrate. After the final infusion, a nurse led us down the hallway to a small alcove near the entrance of the pediatric wing. Mounted on the wall was a brass bell with a plaque beneath it. Ring this bell 3 times well, it's told to clearly say, my treatment's done, this course is run, and I am on my way. Ethan stared at it. Go ahead, the nurse said softly. It's yours to ring. He reached up and gripped the rope. The first ring echoed down the hall. Nurses looked up. A doctor stepped out of a room. Parents in the waiting area turned toward the sound. The second ring brought more people. They lined the hallway, smiling, clapping. The third ring was the loudest. Cheers erupted. Nurses clapped. A janitor wiped his eyes. A mother holding her toddler, bald, pale, still in treatment, nodded at me with tears streaming down her face. I pulled Ethan into my arms and sobbed. He was done. We walked to the car in silence, the late afternoon sun warm on our faces. Ethan was quiet, staring at the hospital as we reached the parking lot. Grandma. Yes, sweetheart. Can I draw all of this so other kids know they can survive too? I stopped, looked down at him. You can draw whatever you want. He nodded. I'm going to. The years that followed were quiet in a way we'd never known. No more 3 times a week trips to the hospital, no more middle-of-the-night fevers, no more terror that every cough might be the beginning of the end. Ethan drew. He went back to school cautiously building strength, making friends. Susan continued art therapy sessions when she could. We celebrated small victories, clear scans at 6 months, a full year, cancer-free, then 2 years, 3, 4, and slowly the shadow of leukemia began to fade. But we never forgot. Every scan, every checkup, every time the phone rang with Dr. Reynolds' number, my heart stopped, until the day we'd been waiting for finally came. On Ethan's 13th birthday, I baked a cake. We sat at the kitchen table, just the 2 of us, and he blew out the candles. The phone rang an hour later. Mrs. Hayes, it's Dr. Reynolds. My stomach dropped. Is everything okay? Everything's perfect, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Ethan's 5-year scans just came back, still clear. Officially, as of today, he's in remission. I closed my eyes. 5 years. 5 years. He did it, Margaret. You both did. I hung up and looked at Ethan, who was sketching at the table. That was Dr. Reynolds. He looked up. You're officially in remission. For a moment, he just stared. Then he smiled wide, real the kind of smile I hadn't seen since he was 5. We made it, Grandma. I nodded, tears streaming. We made it. 2 weeks later, Ethan came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes. He had his sketchbook under his arm. Grandma, I've been thinking. I dried my hands. About what? I want to have an exhibition for the kids who are still fighting. I turned to face him. An exhibition, he nodded. All my drawings from treatment. The port, the IV, the bell. I want other kids to see that someone made it through. That they can too. I stared at him. 13 years old and already thinking about giving back. That's a beautiful idea, I said quietly. Will you help me? I smiled. Of course. We started planning the next day. I called around to community centers and libraries looking for a space that would let a 13-year-old cancer survivor show his art. Most places were booked months in advance or wanted fees we couldn't afford. But then I found a small community gallery in Ballard that hosted local artists for free. The director, a woman named Linda, listened to Ethan's story and said yes immediately. We'd be honored, she said. Ethan spent the next 2 months curating 50 pieces from the hundreds he'd drawn over the years. He chose the ones that told the story from diagnosis to bell ringing. Susan helped him mat and frame them using donated materials. I wrote descriptions for each piece explaining what Ethan had been going through when he created it. Ethan practiced his opening speech in front of the bathroom mirror every night. My name is Ethan Hayes. I'm 13. When I was 5, I was diagnosed with leukemia. This is my story. The exhibition was scheduled for a Saturday in June. We sent invitations to friends, neighbors, teachers, the nurses from the hospital. But something happened in those 2 years between 13 and 15 that I didn't anticipate. Ethan kept drawing. Not just memories of treatment, but new work, raw emotional pieces about survival, hope, fear, healing. His collection grew to over 200 pieces. Susan showed some of his newer work to a colleague. That colleague showed it to someone else. Word spread quietly through Seattle's small art community. By the time Ethan turned 15, the community gallery called with a different proposal. "We'd like to offer Ethan a solo exhibition," Linda said over the phone. "A full show, 4 weeks, opening night reception." I stood in my kitchen phone pressed to my ear, stunned. A solo show. He's extraordinary, Margaret. People need to see this. I hung up and told Ethan. He stared at me wide-eyed. A real show. A real show. We started preparing. I thought it would be small neighbors, teachers, maybe a few art students. Local, quiet, a celebration of survival, nothing more. I had no idea what was about to happen. The gallery could hold 200 people. 300 showed up. I stood near the entrance watching bodies pour through the door. Neighbors, teachers, hospital staff, people I'd never seen before. They lined the walls studying Ethan's paintings in silence. Some cried, others stood frozen hands over their mouths. Linda found me in the crowd. "Margaret, this is incredible. We've never had a turnout like this." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Ethan stood in the center of the room, surrounded by his work. 50 paintings lined the walls, portraits of nurses, the bell ceremony, my hands holding his, the port scar on his chest rendered in brutal, honest detail. Each piece had a small placard with the date it was created and a line of explanation. At 7 o'clock, Linda called for everyone's attention. The room quieted. Ethan stepped forward, hands shaking slightly. "My name is Ethan Hayes," he began, voice steady. "I'm 15. When I was 5, I was diagnosed with leukemia." The room was silent. These paintings exist because one person refused to give up, my grandmother. When my mother left, she stayed. I felt my throat tighten. She sold her jewelry to pay for medication. She worked 2 jobs. She shaved her head so I wouldn't feel alone. She sat with me through 127 hospital visits. And when I wanted to draw, she built me a studio in her garage with money she didn't have. He looked at me across the room. These paintings are about survival, but they're also about love. The kind of love that doesn't come from biology. It comes from showing up. Every single day. The room erupted in applause. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tears streaming. The next morning, everything changed. I woke up to 17 missed calls. Someone at the exhibition had filmed Ethan's speech and posted it on a video platform with the caption, "15-year-old cancer survivor's art will break your heart. Abandoned by his mother, raised by his grandmother." The video had 500,000 views. By noon, it had 5 million. By the end of the week, 50 million. The phone didn't stop ringing. A morning talk show wanted Ethan on air. A publisher wanted to do a book. News outlets requested interviews. Art collectors started calling Linda offering to buy pieces. $50,000 for a single painting, $75,000 for another. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone in disbelief. "Grandma, look at this," Ethan said, holding up his laptop. It was an email from a gallery in New York, Gagosian, one of the most prestigious contemporary art galleries in the world. "We are writing to express our interest in representing Ethan Hayes. We would like to offer a solo exhibition at our New York location within the next 6 months." I read it 3 times. "Is this real?" Ethan nodded, eyes wide. The email continued. "We are not extending this invitation because of Mr. Hayes' age, but because his work represents something we have rarely encountered, mixed media, incorporating authentic medical materials, rendered with technical precision and emotional depth that defies categorization. One of our curators described it as outsider art meets medical realism with the visceral honesty of Francis Bacon. We believe the art world needs to see this. I stared at the screen, hands trembling. Gagosian, New York, my grandson. I didn't see the missed call until hours later, the voicemail. "Mom, it's me. It's Sarah." My blood ran cold. "I saw the video. I saw what Ethan said. I'm coming home." The message ended. I sat there, phone in my hand, staring at nothing. 10 years of silence. And now the second Ethan's name was everywhere she was coming back. I didn't know then that the voicemail would change everything. 2 weeks after the video, 3 days after the Gagosian offer, someone knocked on my door. I opened it, and there she was, 10 years older, designer purse, perfect makeup, and the audacity to smile. "Hi, Mom." I stared at Sarah, my daughter, the woman who'd walked out on a dying child and never looked back. She looked good, healthier than I'd ever seen her. Expensive clothes, styled hair. She looked like someone who'd spent the last decade living well. "You need to leave." She held up her hands, eyes glistening with tears I didn't believe. "I know you're angry, but I've changed. I've been in therapy. When I saw that video, when I saw what Ethan said, I realized I made the biggest mistake of my life. 30 seconds, get off my porch. I'm proud of him. I want to be part of his life again." I laughed. "You want to be part of his life now that he's famous, now that galleries are offering him money?" Her face shifted. Just for a second, something cold. "That's not fair. I was sick. I couldn't handle it." "You've been following him online," I said flatly. "For how long?" She hesitated. "A few months, since the first article went viral." She didn't answer. "You don't want your son back. You want his money." "That's not true." "Get off my property." "I have rights. He's my son." "No, he was your son. You signed over custody 10 years ago. You have no rights." Before she could respond, I heard footsteps behind me. "Grandma, who's at the door?" I turned. Ethan stood in the hallway, sketchbook under his arm. Sarah's face lit up. "Ethan, baby, it's me, your mom." Ethan stared at her. No recognition, no emotion. "Who are you?" Sarah's smile faltered. "It's me, your mother, Sarah." Ethan looked at me, then back at her. "Grandma told me about you. You're my biological mother, right? The one who left." I didn't leave. I was sick. I wasn't in a good place. But I'm better now. I came back for you. Ethan took a step closer to me. "You're not my mom. You're just the person who gave birth to me." Sarah's face crumbled. "Ethan, please." "I don't know you, and I don't want to." He turned and walked back into the house. Sarah stood there stunned, then her expression hardened. "This isn't over." I stepped forward. "Yes, it is. Get off my property." She walked to her car, a BMW I knew she couldn't have afforded 10 years ago. She glanced back once before driving away. I closed the door and locked it. Ethan was sitting on the couch staring at his hands. "She's going to try to take me away, isn't she?" I sat beside him, over my body. The phone rang an hour later. "Mrs. Hayes, this is Richard Brennan. I represent Sarah Morrison. You've been served with a court summons. My client is petitioning to restore her parental rights and regain custody of her son." My blood turned to ice. "On what grounds?" "Ms. Morrison has completed therapy and rehabilitation. She's financially stable and wishes to reunite with her child. The hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from today. You'll receive the official paperwork by mail." He hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, face frozen. After 10 years, after everything, she was trying to take him. Sarah didn't want Ethan. She wanted control. Control of his money, control of his future, and she'd hired a shark to get it. The courtroom was small, sterile, intimidating. I sat beside Ms. Patricia Callahan, the elder law attorney who'd agreed to represent me pro bono. Across the aisle, Sarah sat with Richard Brennan, her lawyer, a man in a $2,000 suit. Brennan stood and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, my client is here to restore her relationship with her son. She acknowledges past mistakes. She's completed 2 years of therapy and maintained stable employment. This is a story of redemption, a mother who fell but has risen again." He painted her as a victim, a woman who'd struggled with mental health, who'd made a terrible decision in crisis, who'd spent a decade working to become the mother her son needed. It was a beautiful story. It was also a lie. Ms. Callahan stood. She was 70, gray-haired, unimpressed. "Your Honor, I will present only facts. Sarah Morrison abandoned her 5-year-old son during cancer treatment. She signed over full custody. She did not contact the child for 10 years. She reappeared 2 weeks after a video of Ethan's art went viral, bringing national attention and financial opportunities. The timing is not coincidental. The judge looked at Sarah. "Ms. Morrison, why are you pursuing this now?" Sarah dabbed her eyes. "Because I'm finally strong enough. Seeing Ethan thrive made me realize I need to be part of his life. I'm his mother. I love him." Ms. Callahan called Dr. Reynolds to the stand. "Dr. Reynolds, how many appointments did Ethan Hayes have during his 3 years of treatment?" 127. "And how many was Ms. Morrison present for?" Dr. Reynolds looked at Sarah. 0. 0. And Mrs. Hayes, all 127. "Did Ms. Morrison ever call to check on her son's condition?" Dr. Reynolds hesitated. "Once, about 6 months after she left. She asked if he'd passed away yet." The courtroom went silent. "She asked if he'd died," Ms. Callahan said. "Not how he was doing, if he was dead." "Yes." Sarah's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The judge called Ethan into chambers for a private interview. I wasn't allowed in, but the conversation was recorded. The judge's voice was gentle. "Ethan, do you want a relationship with your biological mother?" "No." "Can you tell me why?" "Because she didn't come back because she changed. She came back because I'm worth money now. She saw the video, she saw the gallery offers. She doesn't want me. She wants what I can give her." "How do you feel about your grandmother?" "She's the only parent I've ever had. She sold everything to keep me alive. She sat with me through every treatment. She didn't have to do any of that. But she did, because she loves me." "If the court grants your mother visitation, how would you feel?" "I'd go if I had to, but I wouldn't trust her, and I wouldn't call her mom." The judge took 2 hours to deliberate. When we returned, her face was unreadable. "I've reviewed the evidence. Ms. Morrison, your petition to restore parental rights is denied. Your lawsuit claiming parental alienation is denied. However, I am granting supervised visitation, 2 hours per week for 6 months. At the end of that period, we will reconvene based on the child's well-being and your conduct." Sarah's face lit up. It wasn't what she wanted, but it was a door. Outside the courtroom, she stopped in the hallway and looked at me. 6 months, she said, smirking. "That's all I need." Ms. Callahan pulled me aside. "The boy just needs to be himself. She'll hang herself." I shook my head. "What if she manipulates him?" Ms. Callahan squeezed my hand. "You can't manipulate someone who sees right through you." But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure at all. They met every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. A court-appointed supervisor sat in the corner. For 3 months, Ethan gave Sarah exactly what she deserved, nothing. The first visit was in a small room at a family services office. Beige walls, a table, 2 chairs. The supervisor introduced herself and sat with a clipboard taking notes. Sarah walked in wearing designer jeans and a smile that looked rehearsed. She opened her arms. "Ethan, baby." Ethan stood by the wall sketchbook under his arm. He didn't move. "I don't want a hug." Sarah's smile faltered. "Okay, that's okay. We can just talk." Ethan sat at the table. Sarah sat across from him. For 2 hours, she tried. She asked about school, about his art, about his favorite foods. Ethan answered in 1 or 2 words, then went back to sketching. The supervisor wrote everything down. When the 2 hours ended, Sarah stood close to tears. "I'll see you next week." Ethan didn't look up. "If I have to." By the 3rd visit, Sarah was getting impatient. She walked in and sat down without the fake warmth. "So," she said, leaning forward, "I heard one of your paintings sold for $70,000. Ethan looked up. "Yeah, that's incredible. What are you going to do with the money?" "Pay Grandma back." Sarah blinked. "Pay her back. She spent over $400,000 keeping me alive while you were in Cabo with your boyfriend. I owe her." The supervisor's pen moved faster. Sarah's face went red. "That's not fair. I wasn't in a good place." "You were in Cabo," Ethan said flatly. "I checked your social media. You were posting pictures of the beach while I was getting transfusions." Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. She spent the rest of the visit in silence. By the 5th visit, she snapped. "You know what?" Sarah said, voice rising. "You're being a brat. I'm trying here. I've been coming every week. I've been patient, and you're acting like I'm nothing." Ethan looked at her calm. "You are nothing. To me. I'm your mother. You're the woman who gave birth to me. That's it. Sarah stood, hands shaking. I was sick, I couldn't handle it, but I'm here now and you're acting like that doesn't matter. Ethan set down his pencil. His voice was quiet, cold. You want credit for showing up now. Where were you when I was throwing up red fluid? When I was begging Grandma to let me stop treatment because I couldn't take it anymore? Where were you when I lost my hair and couldn't look at myself in the mirror? You were gone. And now you're back because I'm famous, because I'm worth money. That's not true. Yes, it is. The supervisor was writing furiously. Sarah looked at her. You're writing that down. He's the one being disrespectful. The supervisor didn't look up. I'm documenting what I observe. Sarah sat back down, fuming. The rest of the visit passed in silence. 3 months and the supervisor pulled Sarah aside after a visit. Ms. Morrison, I'll be submitting my report to the judge next week. I have to be honest, it's not going to be favorable. I'll be recommending termination of visitation. Sarah's face went white. What, why? Because the child has made it clear he doesn't want a relationship. And your behavior, particularly your anger and focus on his finances, raises concerns. This is ridiculous. His grandmother turned him against me. The supervisor closed her folder. With respect, Ms. Morrison, I don't think anyone had to turn him against you. Outside the building, Sarah found me in the parking lot. She stormed over. You did this. You turned him against me. I stood my ground. No, you did that yourself. Before she could respond, a car pulled up. Derek, Sarah's husband. He rolled down the window. Sarah, get in. We need a new plan. Sarah looked at me one more time, then got in the car. They drove off. I stood there watching them leave a cold knot forming in my stomach. I should have taken that threat seriously. If you're still here with me, let me know you're staying. Finish this sentence in the comments. The real twist is going to be, and tell me if you were in my place knowing what you know now. What would you do next? Would you prepare quietly, confront her, or wait for the truth to reveal itself? And just so you're aware, the next part of this story includes dramatized elements and may not reflect real events in every detail. If this isn't the kind of content you're comfortable with, you're free to stop watching here. 3 months after supervised visits began, 1 week before the termination hearing, the night before the Gagosian opening, Sarah and Derek showed up at my door intoxicated. Everything went wrong. The doorbell rang at 11 o'clock. I was in my bathrobe about to go to bed. Ethan was upstairs packing for our flight to New York in the morning. I opened the door. Sarah and Derek stood on my porch. Her makeup was smeared. His eyes were bloodshot. The smell of alcohol hit me immediately, but something else caught my eye. The BMW parked in my driveway, the one Sarah had driven when she first came back, had a dented bumper and a cracked headlight. Sarah's designer blazer was wrinkled, stained at the cuff. Derek's expensive watch was gone. The polished veneer I'd seen months ago had cracked. Whatever illusion of success they'd been projecting was gone. We need to talk, Sarah slurred. Get off my property. Derek pushed past me into the house. Sarah followed. I stumbled backward. What are you doing? Get out. Derek pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward me. Watch this. It was a video. Me sitting beside Ethan's bed in the garage studio 3 years ago, holding a paintbrush touching up the corner of one of his paintings, while he slept in the chair beside me. My blood ran cold. This is from 3 years ago, Derek said, voice steady despite the alcohol. Sarah recorded it through the garage window. All I have to do is send this to one tabloid, one art blog, and the headline writes itself, Fraud Grandma Paints for Sick Grandson. That's not what happened, I said, my voice shaking. I was just fixing a smudge. Doesn't matter what actually happened, Derek interrupted. What matters is what it looks like. Scandal first, truth later. By the time you prove it was innocent, Gagosian will have already pulled the show. Collectors will have already demanded refunds. The damage will be permanent. Sarah stepped forward, holding a stack of papers. We're drowning, Mom, she said, and for a second her voice broke. Derek lost his job 6 months ago. We're $10,000 in debt. Credit cards maxed. We've got nothing. Derek's jaw tightened. But your grandson. He's about to be a millionaire, and we deserve a piece of that. Sarah thrust the papers at me. This is a personal loan agreement. You're borrowing $500,000 from me, your daughter. You'll pay it back over time using proceeds from his art sales. Totally legal between two consenting adults. Derek leaned closer. Sign it, or I hit send on that video. Your choice. I stared at the papers. A personal loan, legally binding. They'd planned this. No, I said. Derek's face darkened. What? I said no. Get out of my house. You stupid. Get out. He grabbed my arm, hard. Sign the paper. I tried to pull away. Let go of me. Sign it. No. He shoved me, hard. I fell backward, my head hitting the corner of the china cabinet. Pain exploded through my skull. I crumpled to the floor, vision blurring. I touched my head. My hand came away wet, dark red. Footsteps pounded down the stairs. Grandma. Ethan's voice. He ran into the living room and saw me on the floor, bleeding Derek standing over me. He roared, "Get away from her!" He pulled out his phone, hands shaking. 911. Someone broke into my house and hurt my grandmother. She's bleeding. We need help. Now. Derek backed toward the door. Sarah, we need to go. Sarah stared at me on the floor. For a second, I thought I saw regret. But then she turned and ran. They were gone before the sirens started. Ethan knelt beside me, pressing a kitchen towel to my head. Stay awake, Grandma. I'm okay, I whispered. The paramedics arrived 6 minutes later. They loaded me into an ambulance. Ethan climbed in beside me. The ER doctor said I had a concussion and a deep cut that needed stitches. They admitted me for observation overnight. Ethan sat beside my bed, eyes red. I'm canceling the exhibition. I turned my head. Absolutely not. Grandma, we're flying to New York. You're opening at Gagosian. You're not giving her that power. Ethan nodded. My phone buzzed. Ms. Callahan. Arrest warrants issued for Sarah Morrison and Derek Morrison. Charges assault on elderly person home invasion, attempted extortion via blackmail. I showed Ethan. Good, he said. I hope they find them. Tomorrow we'd fly to New York. Tomorrow Sarah and Derek would learn what it meant to lose everything. I walked into Gagosian Gallery with a bandage on my forehead and a cane in my hand. Ethan held my other arm steady. 2,000 people stood and applauded. The gallery was packed. Wall-to-wall bodies, collectors, critics, journalists, artists, people I'd never imagined being in the same room with. The energy was electric. I felt every eye on me as we made our way slowly through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Whispers rippled through the space. A reporter stepped forward quickly. Mrs. Hayes, is it true you were assaulted last night by your own daughter? I kept my voice steady despite the pain throbbing in my temples. Yes, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here for my grandson. Another reporter pushed closer. Mrs. Hayes, do you know where Sarah Morrison is right now? No, and frankly, I don't care. Tonight is about Ethan, not her. We reached the front of the gallery. 50 paintings lined the walls, each one a piece of Ethan's journey through hell and back. The chemotherapy port, the IV drip, the hospital bell, my wrinkled hands holding his scars, his survival. And in the center of the room, covered with a black velvet cloth, was the final piece. The gallery director, a woman named Claire with sharp cheekbones and a sleek black dress, stepped forward holding a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. It is my profound honor to present the work of Ethan Hayes, one of the most extraordinary young artists of our time. His work is raw, visceral, and deeply moving. Tonight he has a piece to share with you that he completed just last week. Ethan, would you like to do the honors? Ethan walked to the center of the room. The crowd fell silent. He gripped the edge of the cloth and pulled. The room gasped. It was me. A life-sized portrait of me sitting in a hospital chair. My head was bandaged. My eyes were tired but open. One hand gripped the armrest. The other reached forward, palm up, as if offering something invisible. Hope, maybe, or strength. The detail was breathtaking. Every line on my face, every shadow under my eyes, the harsh fluorescent hospital light, the exhaustion, the love. At the bottom, in small black letters, the woman who stayed. Beneath it, a brass placard, not for sale. The room erupted in applause. I covered my mouth with both hands, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. Ethan turned to the crowd and spoke clearly into the microphone. 10 years ago, one woman walked away because she couldn't bear to watch. Another woman stayed because she couldn't bear to leave. Everything I create, everything you see on these walls tonight exists because of her love. He paused, looking directly at me. My grandmother didn't have to stay, but she did. Every single day, through every needle, every scan, every moment I wanted to give up. She stayed, and that's why I'm standing here tonight. Not because of talent, not because of luck, because she refused to let me go. The applause was deafening. I walked to him slowly, cane tapping against the polished floor, and we hugged in front of 2,000 people while cameras flashed like lightning. And then chaos. A loud commotion erupted near the gallery entrance, raised voices, security moving quickly. The crowd parted like a wave. 2 police officers in uniform walked through the center aisle holding Sarah and Derek in handcuffs. They'd been caught trying to enter the gallery through a locked side door with a forged press pass. Sarah saw me across the room, her face twisted with rage and desperation. "He's my son," she screamed, voice breaking. "Mine, not hers. I gave birth to him." The officers pulled her firmly toward the exit. Cameras swarmed. Journalists shouted questions over each other. Derek said nothing. He just stared at the floor, jaw clenched. They were led out in handcuffs, and the heavy door closed behind them with a dull thud. The room was silent for a long moment. Then someone in the back started clapping. Then another person, then everyone. Not for the arrest, for us, for survival, for the woman who stayed. After the event, I stood outside on the cold sidewalk under the streetlights. Reporters surrounded me in a tight circle. "Mrs. Hayes, your daughter is now facing serious criminal charges. Do you have any comment?" I looked directly into the nearest camera lens. She had a choice 10 years ago. She chose to leave. I chose to stay. That's what made all the difference. I turned and walked away slowly, Ethan beside me, his hand gently supporting my arm. 2 months later, we sat in a courtroom. 2 months after the exhibition, we returned to court. But this time, it wasn't about custody. It was about consequences. The criminal sentencing came first. Derek and Sarah sat at separate tables in cheap suits, both looking smaller than they had that night at my house. The judge reviewed the file. Then he looked up. "Mr. Morrison. Miss Morrison, you have been found guilty of assault on an elderly person during a home invasion, attempted extortion, and conspiracy to commit fraud." Derek stared ahead. Sarah's hands trembled on the table. "Mr. Derek Morrison, you physically assaulted a 76-year-old woman in her own home and attempted to extort $500,000 from a minor using fabricated evidence. You are sentenced to 2 years in state prison. No parole eligibility for 18 months. The bailiff stepped forward. Derek was led away in handcuffs without a word. The judge turned to Sarah. "Ms. Morrison, you were an accomplice to a violent crime against your own mother. You helped orchestrate a blackmail scheme targeting your 15-year-old son." Sarah's lawyer stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client was under significant emotional distress. She made a choice." The judge interrupted sharply. "Ms. Morrison, the only reason you are not receiving a harsher sentence is your lack of prior criminal record, but you are culpable." He leaned forward. "You are sentenced to 1 year in county jail, followed by 2 years of supervised probation, 300 hours of community service, and mandatory anger management counseling. If you violate probation, you will serve an additional 2 years in state prison." Sarah's face went white. The bailiff approached and she was escorted out sobbing. An hour later, we were in family court. A different judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and silver hair. Ms. Callahan stood. "Your Honor, we are here to finalize the permanent termination of parental rights for Sarah Morrison. Given her criminal conviction, her decade-long abandonment of her son during life-threatening illness, and her recent violent attempt to extort him, termination is necessary for Ethan's safety." The judge reviewed the file, then looked at Sarah. "Miss Morrison, do you wish to contest this?" Sarah stood slowly, gripping the table. "Your Honor, I made mistakes, but I've been punished. Please don't take away my son. He's all I have." The judge's expression didn't soften. "You didn't lose your son, Ms. Morrison. You abandoned him when he was 5 years old and fighting cancer. You never visited, never called, never contributed. And when he became successful, you returned not to apologize but to extort him." She paused. This is not a punishment. This is a protection. Ethan Hayes deserves to live without fear of manipulation from the woman who gave birth to him but refused to mother him. She brought the gavel down. Parental rights are hereby terminated permanently. A restraining order of 500 feet is issued. Ms. Morrison is prohibited from contacting Ethan Hayes unless he, as an adult, initiates contact. This order is effective immediately. Sarah collapsed into her chair, sobbing. But as we stood to leave, she rushed forward desperately. Wait, Your Honor, please. He came from me. I gave birth to him. That has to mean something. You can't just erase me. The judge's voice was ice. Ms. Morrison giving birth does not make you a mother. Raising a child does. Being there does. Loving them when it's hard does. My ruling stands. The bailiff stepped between us. Sarah turned to me, tears streaming. Mom, please. He came from me. That has to count. I looked at this stranger wearing my daughter's face and shook my head. It counted once, I said quietly. Not anymore. Ethan had been sitting in the back of the courtroom. The judge gestured for him. Ethan, would you like to speak? He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, smoothed it out, and read clearly. You gave birth to me. Margaret gave me life. There's a difference between those two things. I don't hate you, but I don't know you, and I don't want to. He folded the paper and walked out without looking back. Sarah reached for him as he passed. Ethan, please. He kept walking, like she wasn't even there. Outside, the winter air was sharp and cold. Ethan stood on the courthouse steps staring at the gray Seattle sky. I walked beside him. You okay? He nodded slowly. Yeah, I am. It's over now. It's over. He looked at me and smiled small but real. Good, because MoMA just confirmed the exhibition for next year, 6 months, and I want you in the front row. I smiled through tears. I wouldn't miss it for the world. He took my hand and we walked down the steps together. 1 year later, 14 months after the courtroom, I stood in the Museum of Modern Art watching my 16-year-old grandson speak to 2,000 people, and I realized we didn't just survive, we thrived. The exhibition was called Survival: The Ethan Hayes Collection. 50 paintings hung floor to ceiling in one of the most prestigious galleries in the world. Ethan was the youngest artist in MoMA's history to have a solo exhibition, at 16. Michelle Obama sat in the front row. Oprah was 3 seats down. Lady Gaga stood near the back wall, wiping her eyes. And me, I stood in the corner with a cane in one hand and disbelief in the other. The room was packed, standing room only. Reporters lined the walls. Security had to turn people away at the door. I watched strangers cry in front of paintings my grandson had created with his own hands, paintings born from needles, nausea fear, and a grandmother who refused to let him give up. Then the curator stepped to the microphone and introduced Ethan. The applause was deafening. My boy, thin, pale, scarred, but alive, walked to the podium. He wore a simple black suit. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edges of the stand, but his voice was steady. My biological mother once called me her problem, he began. The room went silent. Margaret called me her purpose. I felt my throat tighten. When I was 5 years old, I was diagnosed with leukemia. Treatment was going to cost over $400,000. My mother heard that number and left. My grandmother heard it and stayed. He paused. His eyes found mine across the room. She sold her wedding ring, the last piece of jewelry my grandfather gave her before he died. She pawned her mother's pearl necklace. She took out a reverse mortgage on her house. She worked 2 jobs. She sat with me for every needle, every scan, every moment I wanted to give up. Tears were streaming down my face now. I couldn't stop them. She shaved her head. Ethan continued. So I wouldn't feel alone when mine fell out. She turned her garage into a studio with money she didn't have. She never missed a single appointment in 3 years of treatment. Not once. The audience was completely still. My grandmother saved my life, but more than that, she gave me a reason to use it. He gestured to the paintings around him. Everything you see here exists because of her. Every brushstroke, every color, every story. I didn't just survive cancer. I survived because someone loved me enough to refuse to let me go. He took a breath, then looked directly at me again. Margaret Hayes, will you please stand? My legs almost gave out, but I stood and the room erupted. 2,000 people, critics, collectors, celebrities, strangers, rose to their feet and applauded. The sound was overwhelming. I saw Oprah stand. Michelle Obama was clapping with tears in her eyes. The whole world, it seemed, was looking at me. Ethan stepped down from the podium and walked toward me. He took my hands. "Thank you," he whispered, "for what I managed, for everything, for staying, for loving me when no one else would." I pulled him into my arms and held him tight. "Thank you for living. Thank you for being mine." We stood like that for a long time while cameras flashed and the applause continued. Outside, as we left the museum, a reporter stopped us. Mrs. Hayes' Sarah Morrison was seen outside earlier. She tried to get in but was turned away due to the restraining order. When asked for comment, she said, "I gave him life." I paused, looked at the reporter, then said quietly, "She gave birth to him. I gave him everything else. There's a difference." The reporter nodded and stepped back. In the limo on the way home, Ethan leaned his head on my shoulder. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said softly. "I am. It's over now." I kissed the top of his head. "It is." He was quiet for a moment. Then, the MoMA curator asked if I'd consider donating The Woman Who Stayed to the permanent collection. I looked at him, surprised. He smiled. "I told her it's not for sale. It's yours. It's always been yours." I squeezed his hand. "People ask me all the time if I have regrets, if I wish I'd had an easier life, if I resent the years I gave up. The answer is simple. I gave him life. He gave me purpose. That's what family really means." Fade to the painting, "The Woman Who Stayed." 2 hands clasped together, light pouring through. Looking back at this journey, I want to share what I've learned through years of pain, sacrifice, and ultimately love. Family drama stories like mine teach us that blood doesn't define family, commitment does. When Sarah walked away, she taught Ethan that biology is just science. But when I stayed, I showed him that love is a choice you make every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. If you're in a situation like mine, facing family drama stories that tear your heart apart, here's my advice. Don't wait for others to step up. You step up. Don't wait for the right time to show love. There is no right time. There's only now. Grandma stories aren't always sweet bedtime tales and baked cookies. Sometimes they're about selling your jewelry, working 2 jobs at 70, and sitting through 127 hospital visits. Real grandma stories are messy, exhausting, and full of impossible choices. Sometimes being a grandmother means being a mother, a father, a warrior, and a shield all at once. God placed that child in my arms for a reason. I believe that now. When Sarah left, I was angry, exhausted, and terrified. But looking at Ethan today, thriving, creating, living, I know every sacrifice was worth it. My lesson to you, never underestimate the power of staying. In family drama stories and in life, your presence is revolutionary. Your consistency is healing. Your refusal to abandon someone is the greatest gift you can give. These grandma stories we carry aren't burdens. They're testimonies. Testimonies that love wins, that sacrifice matters, that one person choosing to stay can change everything. Final note. This content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely valuable. If this style isn't for you, that's okay. Please seek content that better suits your needs.